Night falls on a bustling Tokyo train station in the 1920s. Commuters hurry past, steam from the trains curling in the cold air. Amid the crowd sits a lone Akita dog, ears perked and eyes fixed on the station gates. He waits and waits for a friend who will never return. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we have a story that will touch your heart and deepen your mind in equal measure. It's the true story of Hachiko, the dog who waited 9 years for his deceased owner at a train station, and what his unwavering vigil can teach us about loyalty, love, grief, and the bond between humans and animals. Stick around for the end, where we'll conclude with a powerful reflection that might just connect you to your own experiences of love, loss, and loyalty, and hopefully leave you with a warm heart and maybe a few tears. So grab a tissue, get comfortable, and let's begin with a simple question. What makes a dog's love so enduring that it can outlast even death? In the early 1920s in Tokyo, a professor named Hachiko was longing for a loyal companion. Fate answered in the form of an Akita Inu puppy from the northern Akita prefecture. The professor brought the 50-day-old pup to his home near Shibuya Station, and from the very beginning, their connection ran deep. He named the pup Hachi, which would later become Hachiko, an affectionate form of his name, inspired by the shape of the character for 8 Hachi that his little legs formed when he stood. In Professor Ueno, Hachi found not just an owner, but a best friend and father figure. The professor had no children, so he doted on Hachi like family. The fluffy pup was allowed to sleep beside his bed and even eat meals with him at the table. Through these early moments, a profound bond was born, one built on daily affection, trust, and the simple joy of each other's company. As Hachiko grew from a clumsy puppy into a sturdy, creamy white Akita, he became Professor Ueno's constant companion. Neighbors in Shibuya would see the duo together every day. Each morning, the loyal dog trotted at his master's side through the winding streets to Shibuya Station. There, Professor Ueno would pat Hachi's head, perhaps whisper a promise to return before boarding the train to work. And each evening, as dusk settled, Hachiko would eagerly wait by the station's entrance, tail wagging at the first sight of his owner emerging from the crowd. This daily routine became their sacred ritual. Imagine the scene: the station's hustle and bustle, the clack of train wheels, commuters rushing home, and amidst it all, an attentive dog sitting by the gate, ears pricked forward, scanning every face for one particular smile. When Hachiko finally spotted the professor stepping off the train, his entire being lit up. He bounded toward him with joy, greeting him as if months had passed rather than mere hours. Every reunion was a celebration. In those moments, anyone watching could see the pure devotion flowing between man and dog, 2 dear friends reunited at day's end. But life, as we know, can change in an instant. On a warm spring day, May 21st, 1925, Hachiko escorted his beloved Ueno to Shibuya Station as usual, blissfully unaware that this day would be different. The professor gave Hachi a fond goodbye pat and disappeared into the bustling station crowds, expecting to be home that evening. Hachiko settled in for his daily wait, just like countless times before. But that evening, Professor Ueno did not return. Unbeknownst to the loyal dog sitting by the turnstiles, the professor had suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage during a faculty meeting and tragically died at work. He was only 53, and his life ended without warning, far from the station where Hachiko kept his vigil. That night, Hachiko remained at the station longer than usual, nose twitching at each departing passenger, eyes searching for a figure that never appeared. Eventually, he padded home alone through the dark streets. When Hachiko reached the empty house, he was confused. Where was the warm voice and gentle hand that always greeted him? He sniffed frantically around, finding the professor's familiar scent on a discarded coat. Tired and worried, Hachiko curled up on the professor's clothes and waited. According to accounts, the grieving dog huddled with the clothing Ueno had worn that fatal day, as if the scent could bring his friend back. For 3 days, Hachiko barely ate. He grew sullen and forlorn, likely unable to comprehend why his world had suddenly collapsed. When it became clear Professor Ueno was gone forever, his relatives and friends made arrangements for Hachiko. The professor's wife, Yai, who was actually his common-law wife, had to leave their home, and she sadly could not keep Hachi with her. Hachiko was sent to live with new caretakers, but no distance could break his loyalty. At every chance, the homesick dog would slip away and try to return to his old house near Shibuya. When he didn't find his master there, he began wandering toward the one place Ueno might still come, the train station. Shibuya Station was about 8 kilometers from one of the homes where Hachiko stayed, yet he kept finding his way back there. It was as if an invisible thread pulled him to the last place he had seen his friend alive. Soon, Hachiko appeared at Shibuya Station morning and evening, every single day, just as if his master might step off the next train. Rain, snow, or blistering heat, it didn't matter. The station staff and vendors came to recognize the forlorn Akita, who refused to give up hope. He would sit bound by the ticket gates or on the sidelines, eyes fixed on the swarm of disembarking commuters, searching for one face in an endless sea of strangers. One can imagine the seasons passing around him, cherry blossoms swirling in spring, relentless downpours of the summer monsoon, autumn leaves fluttering, and Tokyo's winter snow gathering on his thick fur. Through it all, Hachiko waited. Many locals thought it was just a phase. Surely the dog would eventually move on. But weeks turned into months, months into years. Hachiko never moved on. At first, some commuters and station workers weren't sure what to do with the dog hanging around. There were even attempts to shoo him away. But as Hachiko's vigil stretched into years, people's hearts were deeply touched. The local vendors and station employees began to feed and care for him. Travelers would spot the devoted dog and ask the station masters about him. Over time, Hachiko became something of a beloved fixture at Shibuya Station, a living reminder of the loyalty we all wish to give or receive. His fur grew whiter and his face older, but still he came, train after train, evening after evening, waiting for a reunion that only he believed in. Many onlookers felt that in his silent, steadfast watch, this dog was teaching them something about the nature of love and perseverance. By 1932, Hachiko had been waiting for 7 years, with unyielding faith. That year, a newspaper article appeared that would catapult Hachiko to nationwide fame. A well-known Japanese dog expert, Saito Hirokichi, wrote about the devoted Akita who wouldn't leave the station. The story ran in a major newspaper, a forerunner of the Asahi Shimbun, and Japan was enthralled. Suddenly, Hachiko was not just a local dog. He was a national sensation, a symbol of loyalty beyond death. People from all over Japan and even abroad learned of how Hachiko still awaited his lost master, and many were moved to tears. Strangers traveled to Shibuya Station just to see him, pat him on the head, or leave gifts. Letters and donations poured in to help take care of him as he grew older. In the chaos of the early 1930s, as the world grappled with economic depression and the clouds of war on the horizon, Hachiko's story shone like a beacon of hope, a reminder of pure love in its simplest form. The outpouring of support led some fans to propose a lasting tribute. In 1934, while Hachiko was still alive, plans were made to erect a bronze statue of him at the station he never abandoned. Hachiko, now aging and slow, was actually present at the grand unveiling of his own statue in April 1934. The statue stood as a symbol for all to see, but Hachiko's own story was nearing its end. Just months later, on March 8, 1935, Hachiko's long wait finally ended. He was found on a street near Shibuya Station, lifeless and at peace, having kept his vigil to his very last day. He had waited for his friend for nearly 10 years, almost a decade, after Professor Ueno's death. Hachiko was 13 years old when he died, which is quite elderly for a dog. He'd lived a lifetime of waiting, equivalent to about 90 in human years. When news of Hachiko's passing broke, a wave of grief swept those who had followed his story. A funeral was held on March 12, 1935, and it wasn't just a small gathering. Crowds of people, young and old, came to pay their respects to the faithful dog. Many wept openly as if saying goodbye to a dear friend. Hachiko's ashes were laid to rest in Aoyama Cemetery in Tokyo, right beside Professor Ueno's grave. In death, at last, they were reunited. The loyal dog forever by his master's side. Even Hachiko's fur was preserved and mounted, displayed at the National Science Museum of Japan, so his memory could live on for future generations. To this day, Hachiko's story is told and retold. His bronze statue still sits outside Shibuya Station. Every year on March 8th, devoted fans commemorate Hachiko's memory at the statue, honoring the dog who taught the world the meaning of unwavering loyalty. As we conclude Hachiko's tale, pause for a moment to reflect on what we just witnessed through time. A dog who could have moved on to a new life and forgotten. Instead, held on to love so tightly that not even death could break his bond. Hachiko's vigil tugs at our hearts because it speaks to a truth we recognize. Love, in its purest form, is patient, steadfast, and sometimes heartbreakingly hopeful. In the face of loss, this dog did what many of us humans might do. Hifsak refused to forget someone he loved deeply. How many of us have waited or longed for someone who's gone? How many of us wish we had a friend as loyal as Hachiko? His story resonates because it is both beautiful and tragic. It shows devotion at its most noble and grief at its most profound. Hachiko may be the most famous example of loyalty beyond death, but he is not alone. Across the world and throughout history, there have been other animals, dogs, and even other species who, like Hachiko, refused to leave the ones they loved. These stories are equally heartrending and awe-inspiring, and they shed further light on the depth of animal emotions. In 1858, a man named John Gray was laid to rest in Greyfriars Kirkyard, Edinburgh. Among the mourners at his humble graveside service was someone who could not fully understand the finality of that moment, a little Skye Terrier named Bobby. Bobby was John Gray's devoted dog. John had been a night watchman who took Bobby with him on nightly patrols, and their bond was as close as any man and dog could be. When John succumbed to tuberculosis and passed away, the loyal little terrier was heartbroken. In fact, Bobby refused to leave his master's grave. Day and night, through Scotland's drizzles and chills, the tiny dog kept vigil by the headstone, as if guarding his friend's eternal rest. He would only leave the gravesite once a day, when the Beals, a 1 o'clock gun, sounded from Edinburgh Castle, a sound he had learned to associate with their daily routine. At that cue, Bobby would scamper off to a nearby cafe, the same one he used to visit with John on their rounds, to take the single meal provided to him by the kind cafe owner. Once fed, Bobby trotted straight back to the churchyard and resumed his post atop the grave of John Gray. At first, cemetery caretakers tried to shoo Bobby away as just another stray dog wandering the grounds, but Bobby's dedication melted their hearts. They built him a little shelter near the grave so he could have some cover in bad weather. The entire city of Edinburgh soon fell in love with this grieving terrier. Locals brought him food and blankets. When a new dog licensing law threatened unowned dogs with impoundment or worse, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh personally paid for Bobby's license and had a special collar made for him, ensuring he could stay by his master's grave unharmed. Engraved on that collar were the words, "Greyfriars Bobby, from the Lord Provost, 1867, licensed." A badge of honor for a dog who would not abandon his friend. And so it went on for an astonishing 14 years. For the rest of his life, Greyfriars Bobby maintained his vigil. He slept on John's grave, stood guard in the daylight, and braved the changing seasons of nearly a decade and a half. Those who saw him were deeply moved. Some might have even felt that Bobby was keeping alive the very spirit of loyalty in a world too often forgetful. Finally, in 1872, at 16 years old, Greyfriars Bobby passed away, fittingly, not far from John's grave. The people of Edinburgh buried Bobby just inside the gates of Greyfriars Kirkyard, so that in death he would lie close to his beloved master. They commemorated him with a granite statue, erected just a year later in 1873, depicting the faithful little dog perched alertly, forever watching. The base of the statue carries a plaque with a message that echoes to this day. Greyfriars Bobby died 14th of January 1872, aged 16 years. Let his loyalty and devotion be a lesson to us all. Indeed, Greyfriars Bobby's story became legend, a Scottish tale of devotion that has been told in books and films, inspiring generations to consider the true meaning of loyalty. These stories resonate with us for the same reason Hachiko's does. They reveal that love and loyalty can bridge even the gap between life and death. In one heartbreaking case, a Labrador named Hawkeye famously lay down beside the flag-draped coffin of his Navy SEAL owner in 2011, unwilling to leave his master even during the funeral. A scene much like Greyfriars Bobby at the grave, played out in modern times. These poignant examples reinforce something profound. Some animals remember and honor their loved ones after they're gone. So what is happening in the minds and hearts of these animals? Are we projecting human feelings onto them? Or do they genuinely experience something akin to grief, love, and loyalty? The emerging consensus among researchers and animal behaviorists is that many animals do form deep emotional attachments, and they can indeed suffer emotionally when those attachments are broken. Let's explore the psychology and science behind animal loyalty and grief, especially in dogs. First, consider the bond that forms between a pet dog and their human. Psychologists often liken it to the bond between a child and parent. Dogs see their owners as a source of security and love. Much like an infant sees a caregiver, they exhibit attachment behaviors, seeking closeness, following us around, becoming anxious when we leave. We've all seen the sad puppy eyes or whines when we head out the door. In fact, dogs can experience separation anxiety when apart from their owners, which is a strong hint that they have an emotional need for that relationship. This is not mere food dependence or routine. It's a deep-seated psychological attachment. Now, when such a bond is severed by death or absence, what we interpret as grief in dogs often manifests through behavior. Animal behaviorists define grief in animals as observable signs of distress following the loss of a companion. In dogs, this might include lethargy, loss of appetite, disrupted sleep, increased vocalization, whining or howling, and a general demeanor of listlessness or depression. If you think about Hachiko's initial reaction, he stopped eating for days and became sullen when his owner didn't come home. It aligns with what we'd recognize as mourning. Barbara J. King, a noted anthropologist who studied animal emotions, has written that dogs and other animals exhibit grief when they change their normal routine and behavior in response to a loss. Hachiko abandoning play and food to go sit at the station each day is a drastic change in routine. arguably his way of coping by holding on to hope. Neurology provides some incredible insight too. Neuroscientists have conducted bunch brain imaging studies on dogs, and they found that similar areas of the dog's brain light up when experiencing emotions that parallel those in humans. For example, the region associated with emotional processing becomes active when a dog is reunited with a beloved human, in ways comparable to what happens in a human brain, feeling joy or love. Dogs have the same hormonal reactions we do as well. Notably, oxytocin, often called the love hormone, is released in both dogs and humans during positive interactions. In a landmark study, researchers discovered that when dogs gaze into their owner's eyes, a simple act of affection, both the dog and the person experience a surge in oxytocin, cementing their bond. This is the exact hormone that bonds mothers to infants and lovers to each other. So on a chemical level, the human-dog connection is literally a loving one. Yet when that bond is broken, it stands to reason that dogs feel the loss. They miss the sights, smells, and sounds of their person. A dog might not understand the concept of the death like we do, but they understand that someone who was the center of their world is no longer there. They may wait, as Hachiko did, clinging to the last place they saw their loved one, driven by a mix of hope, confusion, and longing. Understanding this helps us appreciate Hachiko's story on a deeper level. It wasn't a fluke or a robotic act of habit. It was likely rooted in the emotional lives of dogs. Dogs are pack animals. Loyalty is in their DNA. For tens of thousands of years, since the dawn of dog domestication, dogs that were best at bonding with humans got more food, protection, and care, and thus were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. In Hachiko's case, his loyalty was extreme even among dogs. But it's a difference of degree, not kind. Anyone who has had a dog knows that these creatures love in a manner that is profoundly unconditional. As the old saying goes, I strive to be the person my dog thinks I am, because dogs often love us beyond our flaws and faults. Lastly, consider the stories of loyalty we've told today. Why do they move us so deeply? It's because they represent qualities we aspire to: unconditional love, unwavering loyalty, the courage to stick by someone even in the darkest times. We love dogs not just for what they are, but for what they bring out in us. They remind us of the good within us, our capacity to care, to empathize, to connect across the boundaries of species and language. These tales, though from different corners of the world and involving different beings, all share a common thread: the incredible power of loyalty fueled by love. Why do these stories captivate us? Perhaps it's because they resonate with our own experiences of love and loss. Many of us have suffered the pain of saying goodbye, whether to a person or a pet, and have felt that hollow ache of absence. In Hachiko's persistent vigil, we recognize the part of ourselves that never stops missing those we've lost. In Greyfriars Bobby's devotion, we see the reflection of grief and love that endures through lonely nights. These stories allow us to vicariously experience the bittersweet beauty of a love that doesn't die, even when confronted with the finality of death. They also gently challenge us. Would we be as loyal in the same situation? Do we cherish our loved ones, human or animal, as deeply as these creatures cherished theirs? In a world that often seems inconstant and fast-paced, the image of a dog waiting every day at a train station for someone who will never come home is profoundly humbling. It strips love down to its purest form. Patient, hopeful, and selfless. Hachiko wasn't expecting reward or recognition. He didn't know he would become a national hero or have a statue in his honor. He waited because, in his heart, that was the only thing he could do. Love had bound him so completely that loyalty was as natural as breathing. There's a kind of holiness in that kind of devotion, something that speaks to the best in us. It's no surprise that Hachiko's bronze statue is such an icon in Japan, or that Bobby's statue in Edinburgh invites people to rub its nose for luck, perhaps hoping some of that loyalty rubs off. These memorials are physical testaments to the impact those humble animals had on human hearts. As one tribute so beautifully put it, let his loyalty and devotion be a lesson to us all. So, what lessons can we take from this? For one, these stories remind us to treasure the bonds we have. If a dog can show such extraordinary faithfulness, surely we can strive to be more present and loyal to the people and animals we love. They remind us that love is not measured in time or convenience. 9 years of waiting, 14 years by a grave, love endures as long as the heart remembers. They also teach us empathy. The next time we see an animal, we might remember that rich emotional lives could be hiding behind those eyes. They are capable of more feeling than we often give them credit for. Finally, these stories connect us to our own capacity for love and grief. It's okay to mourn deeply. It's okay to love someone or something with every fiber of your being. In fact, that's what gives life meaning. The pain of grief is, as Queen Elizabeth II once said, the price we pay for love. If you've ever grieved a loved one, a parent, a friend, or a pet, know that your grief is a reflection of the depth of your love. Hachiko's decade of waiting was sorrowful, yes, but it was driven by an unbreakable love. In a sense, there's a quiet triumph in that sorrow. It means the love never died. In our own lives, though we eventually must accept losses, the love we hold for those who are gone can remain a guiding light. As we conclude, think of the Hachiko in your life. Maybe a loyal pet you once had. Maybe a person who stood by you through thick and thin. Or maybe you have been Hachiko for someone else. Steadfast in loyalty. These connections, these loyal bonds, are what truly matter at the end of the day. They are our legacy and our comfort. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of loyalty beyond death. I hope Hachiko's story and the others we shared touched your heart and perhaps brought back meaningful memories of your own. If this story moved you as much as it did us, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep, thought-provoking stories that celebrate the wise, the stupid, and the funny moments of life. We believe every story has a lesson, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. And remember, love and loyalty are never wasted. even if you have to wait an eternity. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next video.